Sven, absolutely pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And so I just kind of want to go straight into it because I know you're a lecturer and you work in Goldsmiths University. And I'd just love to know more about what you do and what you're doing there, and we can go from there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm a lecturer in marketing at Goldsmiths, and I'm also the director of the MSc in Marketing Technology. So it's a new program for master students. And I teach marketing strategy and also technological innovation and market creation, with more focus on market creation, so how new market ecosystems come into existence. So that's my teaching focus, and it's also quite aligned with my research focus. I look at how new markets are created based on new technologies. And I'm also trying to have like a critical view on these issues.
I mean, that's really, really interesting. Now, I mean, smart cities is a whole new market. There's a lot of things which are going into play, new technologies, new projects, and really, I don't know, I mean, this would be a really fun way to discuss this, but you're already kind of redefining, I mean, certain industries. Like there's technology coming in, replacing a workforce, but then there's a new workforce being born in just the absence of the previous one, very similar to the Industrial Revolution. And so, I mean, what are your thoughts on where the market's currently going?
So as you said, it's a huge new market, and I think there are many, I mean, the smart city market is enormous. I mean, there's so many different applications and industries under that umbrella. So it's difficult to predict where this whole, because it's such a huge market, it's difficult to get an overview. So maybe you have to focus on sub-markets here. I mean, even the urban mobility revolution could be considered part of the smart city market. I recently read an article about smart cities in The Guardian, and here it was more like a low-tech approach. So they kind of was against technology or using too much technology, and it's about rewilding and working with nature. And these are some other interesting approaches that are completely outside of the tech industry. So it's very difficult to see where this market is going, but I think given the current trends in society, I think overall there are multiple trends that support the smart city phenomenon, and one is, I mean, very old trend is convenience. I mean, make life more convenient. I think that's getting quicker to work, getting quicker your pizza delivered or something. So that's a trend that always works. That doesn't make people or the city necessarily smarter, but that's still part of the whole phenomenon. And there are other social trends like, of course, environmental issues. I mean, cities, big cities like London, they have major environmental issues, air pollution and so on, and light pollution, if you like. So these are all issues that need to be addressed, and social issues in cities. So all these issues, they get a lot of support from governments, from other stakeholders, and from also from the citizens. So given that smart city builds on these different trends that are very strong at the moment, I think this market is going to grow massively.
100%.
Regardless of the area, I mentioned there are different sub-areas, but I think all these areas are going to receive a lot of growth in the future, given that they are building on such a so strong social trends, as I mentioned, but also technological trends like new technologies, artificial intelligence,
big data, IoT,
all
connectivity, 5G.
I don't need to mention all of them. It's clear. But all these social trends, the technology trends, together they create this huge phenomenon of the smart city. And I think
so. And I'll be really interested to see, because we've had a lot of conversations with people, and in terms of smart cities, everyone defines it in their own way. And so in your eyes and in your mind, what is smart cities?
Good question. I haven't defined the phenomenon yet.
This is a buzzword being thrown out recently. And
I mean, what I don't like about the current definition of smart cities, I think it's a bit too technocentric. It's always about technology. It's about sensors. It's about AI. It's about digital technology that defines the smart city. But I think you have to start with people, with the city. And
100%.
What is a smart city really depends on the situation of the city. So a smart city is, London will be a different smart city than Copenhagen. And so a smart city is aware of its issues and tries to solve them in a smart way. With the use of technology, maybe without technology.
I absolutely love your definition, because that's essentially what World Smart Cities is all about. It's people-centric built like cities, and we're looking at what is most beneficial for people. What technologies can actually improve people's lives and add value to the people's lives. And so what World Smart Cities Forum is all about is having that as the main focus. And it's just amazing because all the people we've spoken to, and they've all come back that it's all about the people. It's all about the community that you're building, and that has to be the main focus. Which then brings me to my next point, which is, what do you think people need? Because in such a materialistic world now, and there's so much going on, and like where Wi-Fi, for example, has become a living necessity, where are we going? What do you think people need?
That's another big question. What do people need? I think people need different things, and everybody's different. So it's never like one answer to that is very difficult. I think, I mean, of course, with the current issues that we experience in the world, I mean, mental well-being, health issues caused by pollution, maybe. So it's the overall well-being of a person. I mean, being content and being a proud citizen of London, for instance, feeling ownership over your environment, over your community, being an active member of the community, contributing something. I think these are all things that people are looking for in cities, that they feel like an active, contributing member of society, and who feel also supported by the community. So this is, I think, an important aspect to it, and I think smart cities have to address that as well, and think about how you create a healthy community, so that people are healthy members of a community, of the local community, but then also the wider community, being a Londoner. But of course, London is huge, then it's probably a smaller community that you identify more
the local
with, like
areas, or the local government areas,
and
boroughs.
I think these are some general things that people need, and that they feel like they make a contribution, they feel like a sense of purpose, and they feel like they can live out their purpose and contribute in their community, make a contribution, meaningful contribution to their community.
100%. And I mean, from your perspective as an academic, I mean, what are some of the things that have piqued your interest, or you think that, oh, this is totally not realistic, or things that you think actually this can really work? So just from your experience as as a watcher really, because you're standing and looking at everything which is going on, what are some of the good things and things that have piqued your interest really?
I think maybe looking at me from more the entrepreneurs and the people who are kind of taking ownership of this whole smart city phenomenon, who make major contributions to that. I think what really works is if you take a community approach here, again, community. So if you are not like the individual entrepreneur who tries to transform the world on your own, but have more like a community of entrepreneurs, and together you transform the city to make it a better place. And I think that's different from the traditional approach, where you're the individual entrepreneur or the company.
Carrying everything by yourself.
Yeah, like Elon Musk. Like everybody wants to be Elon Musk, but not everybody is Elon Musk. And so I think having this sense of community among entrepreneurs, and
more like collaboration, really.
Yeah, a very collaborative attitude, rather than having this competitive attitude and trying to find out what is the best that citizens want, and then tailor your offerings, position them perfectly to the needs of the citizens, and being better than the competitors. It's more like a collaborative culture that ideally should be fostered, and a collective identity. Similar to the fintech industry, they did that quite well. They have a collective market identity, and that helps hugely, because you can then access important information, what is important to citizens, for instance, access important resources, knowledge, know-how, and that helps to make your products mature faster, and mobilize resources. If you can say, I'm part of this community, this smart city community, and then you go to investors, then they know, I remember the smart city guys, they are cool. So that helps mobilizing resources. So if you have this collaborative approach, this community approach, I think that's important for entrepreneurs in that area, and also involving then other stakeholders. So it's a community, and you shape the conversation about what is a smart city, but that also, of course, involves the citizens, the government, and making so that in a conversation, in a discussion, you understand what is actually important to residents, to the citizens of a city, and how can we address these issues? How can we develop meaningful solutions, whether these are high-tech solutions or low-tech solutions? I think this is something that, because I look at how entrepreneurs behave and how companies behave and how they can do their work more efficiently, more effectively, I feel like if those entrepreneurs who adopt this approach, they seem to be a bit more effective and successful than the ones that are the strong individuals and want to transform the world on their own and capture
it just doesn't
all
work. But that's quite interesting because it's. I do think there's a lot happening where, especially with tech, a lot of people are now collaborating together and looking to work together. But as you said, because you focus on markets, so how would that change in the near future? Like, how is it changing the markets in the near future, or the world in general? Because if you're building communities, but essentially there's going to be a lot of international partners, and you're bringing really countries and cities together.
Yeah. Of course, everything will be highly interconnected, and we already see all these trends. But what this helps if you have this more collaborative approach, I think. I mean, smart cities are a relatively new phenomenon, especially for people who are not directly involved. And I think you also have to, from a marketing, from an academic perspective, you also have to shape a meaningful language. If you're part of a community and you kind of shape the conversation together with citizens, with residents, with governments, you create a language that conveys meaning, so that the people who are involved, like especially citizens who will hopefully benefit from all these things, from all these new services and products, that they feel like, oh, this is something I really support, and a shared language is important. And you already have a label like the smart city label. It's like a label that already conveys a lot of meaning. And people already kind of think of what that means, what kind of products or services that might include. So that's a good label. But there's further aspects that need to be shaped, like other things, other terminology that has to be established. Like if you think about a smartphone, then there's the touch screen. Then people know what the touchscreen is. They expect that now with a product. And the same things have to happen with smart cities. That this community of entrepreneurs and companies, that they shape a language that gives meaning, that facilitates sense making among all the stakeholders involved. So that then you can move things forward much more faster and much more effectively. And then you also make sure that everybody is involved and everybody shapes a language. So there's a shared language, a shared meaning system that everybody can agree on.
That's really interesting, but I think I 100% agree. But I think some of the challenges with that is that, as you rightly said earlier, it really depends on the issues the city is facing, and I think every city has its own specific issues and its own underlying challenges. And I think the importance of a smart city is focusing on what are the real challenges and what help do they need, because sometimes they might not need a help at all. As you said, it could be a high-tech solution or a low-tech solution. And I think until the challenges or the issues are first identified, you can't really build that talking point, etc. I mean, there is like a package specifically. For example, if we talk about London, if we talk about New York, the history of the cities is quite similar. They have very old infrastructure, so some of the challenges that they face will be very, very similar. So you can obviously relate to them accordingly. But then when it comes to cities such as, let's say, for example, a developing country, we're talking about like Vietnam, or we're talking about somewhere like Cambodia or somewhere like Bangkok, their issues are going to be completely different. They might need more like waste management solutions, or in more building prop tech and infrastructure, whereas over here we have the infrastructure and it's more just upgrading rather than building it from scratch. And so I think that when it comes to that element, I think smart cities are so broad in general. There's so many different elements and things within it. It's how do you then turn those types of services, really, I think. What you're trying to say is, how do you turn those services into a generic term, which is like a full-on association with, smart cities indicates this, that, and here's what you'll get. But I don't know, do you think there is going to be a one-stop shop package for smart cities? Because I don't know, I find it to be very tricky. Because the value add is going to be the main thing, and especially if you're people-centric.
Yeah, I agree. At the moment, I don't see that there's one language being shaped that applies to all cities. I think even within one city, if you have a huge city like London, you have to maybe divide it into different parts because there are different cultures, complete different social fabric of the different boroughs. I mean, what we've learned also that smart cities, they work quite well on middle-sized cities like Copenhagen.
Yep.
So I think the language that has to be shaped and the meaning system has to be shaped is really tailored to one city, or maybe even like boroughs of a city, of London, for instance, and that's important. And then adapting to the local practices, because that's also very important. I mean, I teach an example of how technology evolves along certain human practices, and that's M-Pesa, like a fintech solution. And in early 2000s, M-Pesa was launched in Kenya, and was like a mobile application system for microfinance loans.
Yep.
And initially it was about microcredit. So microcredit was a big thing, a hot topic at the time. And then they launched it, and the Kenyans, the city, maybe in Nairobi or wherever they launched it, they were really keen on it. And however, it didn't work because the local practices didn't align, because the people, although the institutions really loved it, and everybody loved it initially when they launched it, but then they learned that actually microloan repayment typically occurs face to face.
Yes.
And they love that because it's important community building activity, about getting trust of the people and so on. And that was cut out, this process, because now there was a digital solution. And that shows how then our technology had to change course, and now it's a peer-to-peer payment system because it didn't work.
Yeah.
And similar things will happen here, that there are certain local practices that are very local and don't make any sense to anyone outside outside a certain area, and then technologies will have to adapt to that. And it might be a little thing that no one really is consciously aware of.
Cultural adaptation or regional adaptation.
And it might be things, if you do an interview with citizens or customers in that sense, perhaps they would be constantly aware of that. But when they then use the technology and then they feel like, I don't like it because it's not aligned with how I go about my day, and
it just doesn't fit in.
That's very difficult. And I think that's why every smart city will be very different. We'll have a different language. They all will be called smart cities, so we have established.
But they'll have a different dynamic.
There might be some more general terms that we can establish, but then the lower level, it will be very tailored to the issues and the conditions of each city.
Excellent. Sven, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Unfortunately, I think we're out of time, but thank you so much. Like, I've definitely learned a lot, and that last point especially is just really on point. Something I didn't actually think of either. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.